Dr. Gary Johnson, and I'm going to be presenting to you today about your ears, both hearing, balance, tinnitus, and then treatment for hearing loss. Thank you to Via and her staff for getting this set up and allowing us to use this beautiful venue. And then Facebook Live, and this will also be available on our YouTube channel, which is You Heard It First with Dr. Gary, once we get it edited and put up there. So today we're going to talk about your ears and everything about them, really. So what we're going to go through is hearing, how your ears work, the basic anatomy, some signs and symptoms of hearing loss, and then how you know that you or a loved one is having hearing loss and what it can cause down the road. Then we're going to break away from hearing loss and we're going to talk about tinnitus, ringing in the ears. What is it? How can it be treated and what can it mean? After that, we're going to go to balance issues, how balance can affect your life and how it ties into your ears themselves. Then finally, we're going to circle back to hearing loss and treatment. We're going to talk a little bit about hearing aids, assistive listening devices, and other aspects that go into hearing aids and other accessories that they have that might make your lives more enjoyable. So before we get started, there was a report that came out by HHS called Healthy People 2030. It's a report they do every 10 years where they're looking at goals in order to improve the health of American citizens. Believe it or not, when it comes to ear-related health, there were 6 goals that HHS has put in this report. That's a huge number of goals for such a little part of your body. The goals were as follows: have adults have a hearing test within the last 5 years. Notice, they did not say seniors. The goal is for adults to have a hearing test within the last 5 years. Second, increase the number of adults with hearing loss wearing hearing aids. Third is to have the number of adults with tinnitus evaluated by a specialist. Okay. Finally, next is to reduce the number of adults with hearing loss via the use of hearing protection. That's actually set as 2 goals. The first goal is to reduce the number of adults with hearing loss, and the second goal is to increase the number of adults wearing hearing protection. The final one is to have more adults who have reported balance problems be evaluated by a specialist. So again, this was the Healthy People 2030 report by HHS. So now I'm going to give you a basic anatomy lesson about the ear and how it works. Your ear is broken into 3 parts. The first part's the outer ear. That's the part we can see. That's the pinna, all the way down the ear canal, terminating at the eardrum. This is where you'll have earwax, which again may be causing some hearing issues, but that's where earwax accumulates, is in that area. Between the eardrum and the cochlea is called the middle ear. In there you have 3 bones, they call them the ossicles, which actually takes sound that comes in the ear canal as an acoustic energy and transforms it into a mechanical energy as the sound goes through those bones. The middle ear is air-filled and is also the place where your eustachian tube is, and your eustachian tube connects the middle ear to the back of the throat. That's what happens when you have an ear infection and you have fluid in that middle ear space. That's where it's supposed to drain through. Finally, the cochlea, which is the inner ear. The inner ear is a snail-shaped organ that is fluid-filled and actually has hair cells which stimulate the auditory nerve, which brings sound up to the brain. The inner ear is also where your semicircular canals and balance organs are located. So what are some of the causes of hearing loss? The number 1 cause of hearing loss is aging. Now, when we say aging, most people think 70s, 80s, and 90s. No, it's your 30s and 40s. That's when it starts. We ignore it as long as we can, but that's when it starts, is your 30s and 40s. Most of us know someone who has said, oh, I turned 40 and all of a sudden I need glasses. No, you didn't. You needed glasses 5 years before. and you ignored the problem until you realized, I can't read that sign anymore. With our ears, we don't get that much of a visual notification. So aging, 30s and 40s is really when it starts. It does get progressively worse as we get older, of course, but it's not a problem that starts in retirement age. Genetics. Genetics can be either a genetic hearing loss, i.e. you have a hearing loss from birth, or a genetic predisposition for hearing loss. Now what that means is you are more likely to have hearing loss either as you get older or when you're exposed to noise given your genetic makeup. Finally, noise exposure. When most people think about noise exposure, we think military service, heavy machinery, working in a factory. There's a lot more to noise exposure than just those things. For instance, vacuums, blow dryers, power tools, obviously firearms, guns, driving with the windows down are all things that with prolonged exposure can cause hearing loss. Why should you have your hearing loss tested? Diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure, cancer, any medication that's ototoxic, history of measles or mumps, even in childhood. These are all things that can either cause immediate hearing loss or progressive hearing loss down the road. Smoking and secondhand smoke. If someone smokes, when you inhale the smoke, it gets into your bloodstream, you limit the amount of oxygen in the blood. The less oxygen in the blood, when that blood gets to your inner ear, which is highly vascular, it causes hypoxia, which causes death of the hair cells. That death of the hair cells, in turn, causes hearing loss. So there's a lot of things that we don't think about with hearing loss that actually cause problems down the road. So there's a lot of other medical conditions as well, but these are some of the big ones. If you have them, it's really important that you have your hearing checked routinely, if not every year, every couple of years. One of the things I get asked in my clinics all the time is, hey, I'm here for a wax removal, can you clean my ears? By the way, when should I start having my hearing checked? The answer invariably is, well, 20 years ago? That's when you should start. It's like saying, when should I have my vision checked? Well, I mean, you really should, very often. So, same thing with your ears. Next, we're going to talk about the signs of hearing loss. Okay? First one's really simple, asking people to repeat. What did you say? I couldn't hear you, I couldn't understand you. The second one, you probably don't notice, but your spouse does. Turning the TV volume up too loud. And invariably the answer is, I can hear it, I just can't understand it. Yes, that is a sign of a hearing loss. Now it's a sign of a very specific type of hearing loss that's more high frequency weighted. Third, having difficulty hearing and understanding, especially in background noise. The reason that's important is when we look at age-related hearing loss, you generally have worse high frequencies compared to low frequencies. Again, not all cases, but that's the stereotypic presentation of age-related hearing loss. In that case, low frequency sound, i.e. noise, masks out high frequencies, makes them more difficult to hear. If it masks out the high frequencies and you're suffering from a hearing loss, we get the scenario of, I know you're talking, I understood part of it, but I just didn't get the rest. Or, did you say fish or fifth? Those are different things that happen with high frequency hearing loss, and they're very common. Okay, the next one, somebody alluded to earlier, I'd asked about volume. You said I'm a little bit muffled. I'm actually talking quite loud right now. Masks are not great for communication. I know, everybody here's shocked. Listen, I'm not saying don't wear them. That's not at all what I mean. I'm just pointing out that they are not good for communication. So if you or a loved one is suffering from a hearing loss, be more patient. Understand that the masks, where they're helping in other health issues, are not helping the hearing impaired hear and understand better. Masks can lower the volume of your voice by up to about 10 decibels. That's a pretty significant reduction. Masks also eliminate visual cues. I'm not saying that you're reading lips, but we all learn to speak by reading lips, right? We mimic the shape and the sound produced when we learn to speak. You are, in fact, reading lips at least a little bit. About 1/3 of the English language is visible on the lips. What that means is those subtle cues between SH and TH, you can see those. So your eyes affirm what your ears heard, your brain puts it together, and you understand. When you lose the visual cues, you're relying solely on the ears. One of the things I hear a lot in clinic is, oh, my eyes got worse and my ears got worse at the same time. Well, it's very possible. What's more likely is your eyes got worse and your ears were getting worse, and now all of a sudden you say, I can't hear or see. And that's pretty miserable. So masks, again, I did a whole detailed video on our YouTube channel about it, but masks definitely do affect communication. It's not your imagination, it's really going on. Effects of hearing loss. Communication problems. Duh. We all know that. That's why, obviously, you ask people to repeat. It does affect communication problems. Social isolation. Yes, we're all socially isolated in this current environment, but social isolation with hearing loss is a real thing. People become withdrawn. As your hearing loss gets worse, the idea of going out to dinner with friends when you know you're going to miss half of the conversation and ask people to repeat and frustrate them is very daunting. People don't want to do it, and they tend to withdraw away from those events. Along with social isolation comes depression. Hearing loss and depression are highly correlated. One of the questions that we ask during our intake procedure at the office is some questions regarding how much pleasure you've had in doing things lately. And the reason is because depression is highly correlated with hearing loss and these other issues. Neural atrophy. Neural atrophy basically means that the neurons in your brain are not getting stimulated. Not all of them, but the ones associated with particular pitches where you're having trouble hearing. So, untreated hearing loss over time causes understanding problems. When you have an understanding problem, we call it a word recognition score, is significantly reduced, your ability to comprehend speech without visual or contextual clues is dramatically diminished, even if we make the volume louder. This is an area where we've made mistakes for years, is in the field of audiology and hearing healthcare in general. When a patient comes in, we try to treat the effects of hearing loss. We try to treat the communication problems. It's very important that we do that, but what's more important is that we educate the patient that the sooner they seek treatment, the better they're going to do with treatment. For instance, if you have a mild to moderate sensory neural hearing loss, meaning that it's a loss in the inner ear or beyond, and you have word recognition scores of 95%, 95% comprehension is your ceiling. It's pretty darn good. Mind you, the test is done without competing noise, and the test is done with no contextual clues. So you can't fill in the blank. On the other hand, let's say you've known you had this mild to moderate loss for 10 years. Now you have a moderate to severe loss, so it's gotten worse. But now your comprehension is 30%. 30% is your ceiling. That's 3 out of 10 words. That's not very good, okay? So your understanding ability is more important when it comes to treating the hearing loss than the actual hearing loss itself, the level of hearing loss it is. Untreated hearing loss over time does cause reductions in understanding. The underlying reasoning for that is neural atrophy.